Welcome to the GC podcast, the voice of the global co-working community. I'm your host, Liz Elam, and I'm thrilled to have Jonny Rosenblatt, co-founder and CEO of Spacemade, with us today, one of the UK's fastest growing flexible workspace operators. Jonny's been shaping the co-working landscape for more than a decade. Before launching Spacemade in 2019, he founded the Headspace Group as an early pioneer of creative co-working in London, which he successfully exited in 2017. Today, Spacemade partners with building owners to create beautifully designed, community-driven spaces that reflect the local culture while helping landlords tap into the growing demand for flexibility. So, Jonny, welcome. How the hell are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm really good. Very nice to see you. It's been a little while.
Oh, yeah. But what were we together? 2 weeks ago in
Yeah,
London?
well, exactly. It was very nice to hang out in London when you were here for GC London. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you. It was good. Always good to see you. So life is good. You feel well.
Life is good. Life's okay. Yeah, it's busy. Lots going on with business. Lots going on with family. But I can't complain. All's okay. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things that I'm very focused on is my morning routine. I have figured out that my morning routine really sets me up for the day. So I get up early, I do some readings, I always walk my dogs, I meditate, and I'm curious how other leaders get their day started. So I'd love to hear if you have a morning routine and what it is.
I would love to say I have a very regular morning routine, but it is generally dictated by my children and their kind of wake up routines. I have three kids from 6 to 12. And so generally my 6-year-old gets me up in the morning and, we'll play a bit. He'll ask me about last night's football results. And that tends to be the start. You kind of got to rush them in. But on a few days a week, I like to be in super early to the office, which I think is really important just to kind of get some focus time. At least 1, maybe 2 days a week, I like to take my kids to school because I just think it's like quite valuable time. And where I can, particularly when in the nicer summer months, I like to run. So running super early in the morning is just a great it's me time, it's my space, and I'll get 5 to 10K in a few times a week. And that's a really nice way of starting the day as well. But probably the most sort of British style is that I always start my day with a cup of tea.
Of course you do.
I am a coffee drinker, but you got to start with tea and then you graduate onto coffee later in the day. That's my trick.
Know.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Okay, well, let's get into it. So you have been part of co-working since the early days, like I was as well. What inspired you to start Headspace, and how did that experience shape your vision for Spacemade?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. I was recently described as like one of the OGs of
Yeah, you
the
are.
co-working industry, which I sort of took with like, okay, that's kind of quite sweet. And then it made me feel super old. But anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, I started my last business, Headspace, in 2012. So I was working in kind of commercial real estate. And at the time, just could see that there was very, very little in terms of a good product offering for kind of young creative businesses, and actually everything was still very, very heavily lease focused. And there was no co-working, wasn't a thing. It was serviced offices, but they were very dry and uninteresting and generally kind of transitory space. And so that
And I
was
would say
really
they still are.
sorry.
I would say they still are.
What, serviced offices?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Look, there is a bit
Dry,
of that.
soulless.
Well, I'm sure we can come on to the evolution a bit more, but actually it really did take a view that it was an opportunity. I was also driven by a desire to do my own thing, and it just felt like this perfect opportunity. So built that business over a kind of 5-6 year period. And in late 2017, I sold it to BE Offices, who are quite a big kind of serviced office provider in London. And I was out the next day. And that was an amazing experience, a great growth journey, a great lesson. I sort of sold my business by the age of 33, 32,
awesome.
33. And so it was a kind of really interesting time in my life. And then I guess, that model was really focused on, I suppose, what a lot of the co-working sector has been, which is, taking leases, rent arbitrage model and seeing what margin you can generate over and above your fixed costs. Fast forward a few years, and like after I sold, I was getting a lot of landlords calling me up
Uh-huh.
saying, "Hey Johnny, I want to do a WeWork." That was what everyone used to say.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
like 2018. Everyone, I want to do a WeWork. And so I couldn't, I was restricted. I couldn't do very much, but I soon met my future business partner, Dan Silverman. And Dan and I met, and I went and actually did a bit of consulting with him at his kind of traditional landlord business he was working at. And we looked at operational real estate and how that might work. And fast forward a few months later, I disappeared after that job, and I thought, I'll work out what I'm going to do. Anyway, Dan called me up a few months later. He said, "Let's meet for a coffee." So I said, "Oh, okay, we'll meet for a coffee." He said, "I've just left my job and we're going to start this thing." So I'm like, "Whoa, okay, really? I'm not prepared for this." So we did, and we became pretty obsessively focused on this. And the whole premise was really, how do we deliver flexible space for traditional landlords who are unable to deliver space and operational know-how themselves? And that really became the premise. It was about delivering this kind of holistic product, opening up, a team of experts for the kind of real estate market. And that's where it really began. And that was late 2019, early 2020, we started that business. Yeah. And here we are. I'm still, still driving it forward. Unfortunately, Dan, who was a key driving force of this business, very, very, very tragically passed away early this year. But everything that we do in this business has him in the DNA of it, and we are, we're building this business, continually in his name and with his vision as well. So a very detailed story that can kind of travels that 6-year period. But yeah, I mean, we continue to grow and we continue to focus on Spacemade's growth.
Yeah. Well, I'm very sorry about Dan. That's
Thank
very
you.
difficult to lose your co-founder and your dear friend.
Absolutely.
And I know that will just, be a thread through the rest of your life honoring him, and I think that that's a beautiful way to do it.
100%. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, Space Made, how many locations do you guys have now?
So we have just opened site number 16.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So
amazing.
we're at like
And
about 300,000 square feet of space.
you have a kind of several buckets of verticals that you tend to fall into. Can you kind of talk about how that came about?
Yeah, I think it stems from why we started this business, which was
Mhm.
about creating a product for, landlords to go and deliver flex space. How does a landlord deliver space to its customers? How do they deliver a product and a service that fundamentally is, I suppose, slightly at odds with, capital allocation that you see
Mhm.
in commercial real estate? And what we've tended to do is always look at the building and the set of buildings and the set of assets that the landlord has, and try and solve the problem that building needs to disrupt or needs to fix. And
Mm.
so we tend to, instead of saying this building works really well for my brand, we look at the
Mhm.
building and we say, well, what can we build to create a product here that
Mm.
fixes the landlord's problem, which very often is just about driving revenue, but sometimes it's much
Mhm.
deeper than that. And so we've really honed in on building individual brands and products for each different building. And,
Mhm.
what does that mean? It kind of means that you know, a lot of our spaces are, generalist spaces, but we create different products for different markets. So it might be that we can see that there's a specific target market type of user in maybe some of our sort of more, close to home locations. So we run a few sort of
Mhm.
more suburb London locations, or there needs to be a slightly different demographic for our kind of central London or central Birmingham locations. What we've been doing a little bit more of this year actually is focusing actually on sector specific spaces. And so we just opened, earlier this year, we opened 2 spaces in partnership with the Howard de Walden estate, which were focused on purely on the health tech sector. So how can
Mhm.
we build a product that focuses just on businesses in health tech? Similarly, we've launched a space in West London, Notting Hill, which is purely focused on the fashion and beauty industries. And actually, what we found quite fascinating is that you're building a space for a community within an existing ecosystem and within the
Mhm.
existing community. So, we will never profess to be experts in health tech or fashion, as you probably know from the way I dress. Um, but what we do is we can help facilitate all of those connections that people want to build within those ecosystems, and it's quite amazing. I mean, you came to one of our health tech
Mhm.
spaces. It's quite
Beautiful.
amazing when you sit in that central atrium, which is this really big hub of space, the amount of people you see coming in and out who walk in and they just know, several people around the room, and they
Mhm.
can just go and greet them and say hello. And I didn't know you were here. And they're all super connected in what they're doing. And so I think
Yeah.
that's really, really interesting. And it becomes this kind of very interesting play. And it allows us to execute a product that the landlord kind of wants to deliver very often. So not always sector specific, but very much open to kind of keeping everything focused on what the landlord wants. And we work a lot, very, very transparently with our landlord partners. We show them everything, kind of warts and all.
Mhm.
If buildings are doing great, then fantastic. If there's a problem, we have a very open dialogue with them. We can show them. We have live dashboards that they can log into daily to
Right.
see the
Mhm.
progress, and the reporting is very, very open book. And so
That's
we're
awesome.
delivering a product, and then it's about delivering it on their behalf as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I love it's so fun that you get to design so many spaces from scratch and so many brands from scratch. I was just looking at your newest space, the Eleni?
Elise, yeah,
Elise,
Elise,
and I was
yeah.
like, "Ooh, I love this look and vibe." It's like it's just so fun that you just like, I don't think you're ever gonna get bored because 'cause you're constantly creating and evolving and thinking about what's next and how do we design today and what does this group need, and it's just it's I think it's so smart.
No, 100%. Actually, it keeps everyone invigorated. I mean, yeah, if you ask my marketing team, and we have to build a different brand and elevate a
Yeah.
different brand every time we launch a building, they might feel slightly differently. But actually, you're right. It's fresh. It's
Mhm.
energizing to create a different product every time, because you can't rest on your laurels. You can't sit there and go, okay, let's just roll out the same thing again. And
Right, you
and it
can't.
gives this creative flair to the design team, to the marketing team, but
Mhm.
actually, to our community teams and our sales teams as well, to basically say, well, look, this is what you're looking for. This is the right
Uh-huh.
building for you. And it
Yeah.
becomes this kind of quite interesting play that people don't get bored of seeing your product over and over again.
Right, right. Yeah, I really, really like that aspect of it. So, one of the things you guys have said about your business before is that about facilitating meaningful connections. How do you design and measure the moments of connection in your space? I'm curious if you've found a way to do that.
Yeah, really, really quite timely actually. So there's a few things that we do. I mean, one thing we built a few years ago was more for internal purposes. So for our team, and everyone is focused on it. We have this company wheel that actually allows everyone to kind of hone in on what are the key decisions to make and what lens do we
Mm,
look at these decisions through. So at the center of all of that is kind of creating connections within our spaces. But then there are various
mhm,
strands that help focus that. And I think one of those strands is that we are absolutely focused on what we call creating evangelists. So we want
mm,
people to evangelize about our space, and that can be our
yep,
team, but that can be
yep,
our members as well.
mhm,
You will have seen this countless times over the years, and every operator that's listening will feel the same. There is absolutely nothing better than walking into one of your spaces and seeing one of your members showing someone around the space and
Oh,
telling them
it's
what
so
they love.
great.
It's like
Nothing
the
better.
greatest, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so
sell it for me.
we've really lent into that, and actually that's become a core focus of the business. So how do we create these evangelists? The other thing that we measure is the kind of what we call the sort of lifetime value of the client,
Mm,
of our customer. And so we focus on, you know obviously, what their value is to the business in terms of what they're
mhm,
paying as a member, but also the duration of time that they're staying. And so we
yeah,
can spit out quite an interesting number that shows, as a sort of benchmark where our members should be, and if actually, that lifetime value is something that people can affect in the business, because if you can retain your members, then the lifetime value drives up, and actually everything then stems from that. So those are probably the two key areas that we do that with. And
mhm,
on top of all of that, or to feed into that, I suppose, we run. I think last year we ran over 500 member events across our
yeah,
spaces. and they're well received and people enjoy them, and they're about socialization, and they're about connecting people, and they're actually about making sure that people open up beyond their, you know, their screen or their sort of small private
Yeah.
office, and actually they're opening up to sort of meet other people within their community. And our community teams are measured, on the with KPIs focused on delivering on that, and that
Yeah.
becomes a real core within what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm loving that right now there's a real focus on events kind of globally. Like people need help connecting,
Yeah,
and events are a great way to do that, right? Just make it for them,
of
invite them
course.
to it, make it easy. And because we are so disconnected, events are just more important than ever before.
Well, I think as an industry, we have a quite an important role to help people combat this sort of, I'm not saying, I combat a sense of loneliness, because actually very
Of course.
often we have so many people that are sat working from home, day after day, and actually we find that a lot of our members, as I'm sure across the board, and across, across the pond as well, like you'll see people coming in some days and working from home some days. And actually, how do you make that day that they're coming in meaningful enough to actually be there? Like, how do you
Right.
connect people? How do you make them feel connected to an outside world that's basically not, their own small business? It could just be them. They could be working remotely. There's so many different variables
Mhm.
here. But actually, this is about people, and we're
Yeah.
social beings. And I think there's such a huge value that we as an industry need to place on building those connections between people. And that's why, like, at the core of everything we do, we are about building meaningful connections.
I love that, and that's why real estate needs you because they have no freaking idea that they need to do that.
Sure.
And it's like one of my themes that I'm looking at for my megatrends for next year is connection over capitalism. Because I can't explain to you yet, I'm working on it, exactly how it's the secret sauce through numbers, but it is the secret sauce. And once you discover that and you prioritize connection, the capitalism works itself out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You cannot just create a product for financial gain. It might work in the short term,
Mhm.
but long term, it does not hold its weight. And
Nope.
we've seen that in the real estate industry by this sort of, this ebbing away of kind of actually just creating a dry, functional, cat A product where
Right.
actually here's your floor space. You're going to rent it from me for 10 years, and you're going to have to fit it out, and actually you're going to have to pay me to take it out in the end of it. That's all disappearing slowly,
Yeah, it's
slowly,
gone.
slowly. And so actually you've got to invest in that kind of the social capital. You've got to invest in what that kind of connectivity means. You've got to treat people like people,
Yeah,
and actually only then can you really start to build something from there. But the foundations of commercial real estate have been rocked to its core, in the last 5, 6 years. And, we as a subsector of the industry play an important role in rebuilding that.
yeah,
I think there is a lot more that can be done across the board. And I like to think that the traditional market is imitating a lot of what the co-working world has been doing for the last, decade plus.
totally.
And so,
Yeah,
that's a great sign. It's a great indicator.
yeah, we are their lab.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Totally. Yeah, love it.
Hey there, if you're in the co-working and flex space industry, or even just curious about it, you need to be at Juicy. Juicy USA 2026 is headed to New York City, and we'd love to see you there. You can expect expert-led sessions, small group roundtables, a vendor expo, and non-icky networking. We've got drinks, dinners, after-hour hangouts, and tours of the coolest co-working spaces in town. It's where the future of work meets real human connection. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to juicy.co to grab your ticket today. We'll save you a seat.
Okay, so you're in several markets now. You're in London, you're in Leeds, you're in Birmingham. How do you see co-working demand and community culture varying across different markets?
Yeah, there are sort of, I suppose, some fundamental shifts just in terms of the way you plan the space. So actually, square footage requirements change depending on the market that you're in. I
Mhm.
think. I think there's an expectation in London that you can maybe have slightly less floor space, but greater amenity. Whereas in regional cities, feel a little bit more like you still need to give a bit more of that kind of floor space within an office. I suppose that's kind of, a small detail point. I think what we've seen, as well as Birmingham and Leeds, which we've operated for a few years and have been actually great products for us, and they're really fantastic buildings with great retention. But what we've seen also is that we have another variable, which is this kind of close to home location piece,
Mm,
which is interesting because we've seen that actually there's a difference in the way people engage and the community that is built in those spaces. So, you know, we talked about sort of communities within ecosystems of kind of sectors, but actually
mhm,
when you build a close to home location, you have genuine community. We see it a lot. We have people who will walk their kids to school and then walk together to the office because that is their kind of space that they're all living in. They
mhm,
all live within 10-minute walk of the space. And so I think that's quite an interesting play. And actually that feeds a lot of what we then do in terms of how do we talk to our customers? How do we attract new customers? Well, actually, so much of that is local. Of course, once you get into central London, it changes. It changes differently.
yeah,
But I think what we've seen is engagement levels are probably way higher in regional cities. It
mhm,
might just be that out of London, people are much friendlier. I don't know. It's like there's a thing in the UK that Northerners are just much friendlier than Londoners, and
mhm.
my wife, being a Northerner, would definitely testify to that. I just think you have to focus on different buildings and different locations in varying ways because to have a one size fits all simply doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
And actually, what we've noticed over the years, looking at other things in regional cities, is that no one wants to be told this is how we do things in London, so it's going to work
Oh,
for you
yeah,
because it does not
yeah,
work. Categorically
yeah.
does not work.
Yeah, it's like your real competition is their home now,
Sure.
and we don't wanna commute. We don't wanna spend a bunch of time in the car or on the train. We want proximity, we want ease, we want it to conveniently work into our life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you need to play into that. You need to speak the language of your customer. And
Mhm.
you can't look at everyone on in a sort of through a single funnel because it just
Yeah.
doesn't work. It just does not work. And you don't get the response rate that you need from those people on that
Mhm.
basis.
Yeah. Okay, totally switching gears. I'm
Yeah.
curious how you guys are using AI to operate and deliver hospitality. What have you guys done with AI?
Yeah, we've like every business, I think globally, we're looking at AI across a number of streams, and we're being careful as to how we implement it. So, taking away from kind of the classic case of using ChatGPT or Gemini to kind of actually formulate how people do things and on an
Mhm.
individual level. I think what we're gradually piecing together elements which say, well, how do we remove the kind of low hanging fruit and the very sort of manual, time consuming, boring pieces of the jigsaw? And we've done that, I suppose, in two elements I can really think of off the top of my head. One is that we have filtered basically all our inbound sales inquiries. They get filtered through AI. And
Mhm.
there's a discussion that happens, an email exchange that happens very early on until we get to the point of qualifying a lead. And
Mm.
we're sifting through, give or take, 1,000 leads a month. And previously that had been handled by one central salesperson who is phenomenal, and she works through these leads and these inquiries all the time. But actually, so many of those leads just sort of disappear very quickly. So we looked at, well, what's the pinch point? That is like getting something from an unqualified lead to a qualified lead. And if
Mhm.
you can remove the painful human interaction at that point, you can then actually focus your time, and our central sales can focus their time on actually working on leads that are worth working on. And so we've implemented, a really strong tool that enables us to do that, which has been really helpful. And so that's been a really helpful piece. The other one that really springs to mind is just from a finance perspective. Chasing, chasing payments is the bane of most finance teams' existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so about 6 months ago, we implemented and rolled out another sort of automated sort of AI tool that
Mm-hmm.
responds to late payers. And it has been a meaningful uplift
Ooh, that's
to
exciting.
changing the way in which we receive payments and the way late payers interact with us as well. So that has freed up so much time for our finance
Mm-hmm.
team, but also kind of actually made the whole process so much more efficient. And you'd be amazed the speed of response and the speed of payment. And it's only a small percentage, but it's time consuming
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that actually that has a major impact. So that's been really, really interesting to see as well.
Love it. Love it. Okay, we have two more questions.
Oh yeah.
So, looking ahead, where do you see our industry headed in the next like 5 years or so? And what's really exciting for you when you think about the future of this industry?
Well, just a light question for us. I think there's so much to be excited about. If you take a step back and look at it from a kind of macro viewpoint, as we've already talked about, the whole market has moved in our direction. And that's about hospitality, it's about flexibility, it's about
Mm-hmm.
kind of operational real estate. So as the market moves in our direction, that really does just open up more and more opportunity. And every indicator points towards more flexibility. I think probably where we maybe as an industry need to do better is looking at the products we all create through the lens of the end user. And,
Mm,
we have flex, co-working, managed product, landlord managed product, Cat A plus. Like it's so confusing because what we're
mm-hmm.
saying is this is a consumer product, pay a monthly subscription, you're going to enjoy it. Actually, what is then being bombarded at people searching for office space is like this kind of plethora of options that is frankly
Mm-hmm.
confusing. And I
Yeah.
get confused by the nuances of
Mm-hmm.
like, what do these different products really mean? And, I
Yeah.
live and breathe this industry every day. If you have no idea and you just want a cool office space and you
Yeah.
want somewhere to bring your team together, that is really confusing. So I think as an industry, we probably need to do quite a lot better at creating very clear lines about what our product offering is. But fundamentally, I think we're in a pretty interesting growth market. I mean, I look at London. I was at one of the big property houses, gave a presentation last week. London now is probably like 10% flex of the total office stock, which has gone from 5%, 6%, maybe
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago. I think that's a huge, huge growth. Interestingly, there's this sort of other element which they termed as like shadow flex, which I thought was quite interesting,
Hmm.
which is probably another further 5% of growth, which is basically landlords delivering kind of probably pre-fitted space that they've had back from tenants as
Mm.
flex. Now, we
Yeah.
know that's not flex. We know that's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
a product, but it's important to kind of create that product differential. And I think that's a really good example of the importance of brand in this sphere,
Yeah.
because actually that product differential between a landlord and an operator diminishes because of brand building. So if all the different operators continue to grow their brand and what it stands for and really focus on that as a product, then actually that brand piece becomes way, way more important to the end
Yeah.
user and helps focus attention a little bit more.
Yeah, and I can't let this go without stating, like, that is why we started C20, Jean-Yves and I, because we
Hmm.
saw that the nomenclature problem is a problem.
Yeah.
We like backing the term co-working because the term co-working has meaning around connection and community, and flex is a very nebulous term. It's terrible for search. And I like that the real estate world is kind of self-selected into flex. Like, that's great. You guys be flex. If you understand community and you want to build for people, you should be co-working.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think though the only issue, and this is where the education comes into play, is that
Mhm.
co-working to some means, you know, open space, take a desk,
Which
drop
is
in.
why it's up to us to fix it. Because
Correct.
that is a misunderstanding.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right.
I will get on that soapbox forever, so I'm going to stop myself.
Okay.
Okay, so last question. What question should I ask you, Jonny, that I didn't?
Oh, wow. What should you have asked me? I think there's a lot that we probably have focused on as a business, interestingly, around impact and sustainability. And actually, we just
Mm,
released our impact report the other
mm-hmm.
day. So you could have asked me about that, but you probably
Yeah.
didn't know about it. So I will tell you about it anyway.
Oh, goody.
But yeah, we've just released our 2025 impact report. And actually, what's amazing, what I've found amazing is that I obviously know a lot of what's going on across the business, but when you see this packaged document of everything that we're doing and honing in on, it's amazing because actually what we do is genuinely make a meaningful difference in the buildings that we operate in.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen is like actually sustainability is like woven into everything we do as a business. And that's around renewable energy, it's around kind of waste management strategies, it's like lowering carbon footprints, and we're tracking all of this, and everything is done with purpose as well. So we're a B Corp, and as a
Mm-hmm.
certified B Corp, we have to hold ourselves accountable, like not just for profit, but for people, for communities, for planet. And actually, the one thing that's been awesome is that we led this charity initiative through the business, and we've created these kind of charity rates across all our buildings. But instead of just saying, here's our chosen charity for the year, we have asked
Mm-hmm.
every single one of our spaces and the community teams to come up with 2 specific charities that are either local to them or that are close to their hearts. And those
Mm,
have all been kind of like given to the community teams to actually say, well, this is important to this local community. So we
mm-hmm.
have really strong kind of discounts for registered nonprofits, but actually we're raising money in those buildings through events, through kind of charitable donations for on the ground grassroots charities that are related to that particular building. And I love that because actually
I love
it's
that.
meaningful and it brings everyone a bit more connected to what we're doing.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Congratulations on that and all your success, Jonny. I am
Thank you.
such a super fan of yours. I love what you're doing. I think it's so incredibly smart, and I really appreciate you giving back and sharing your story with us because you are a badass.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you. And I know, it goes without saying, but actually what you do for the global co-working community is amazing. And, having a voice that is continually showcasing what everyone's doing across the world, shouting out to operators that are doing amazing things day in, day out on LinkedIn and through all the various channels and through your podcast, it elevates the voice of the industry. So thank you to you as well, because you are
Oh, thank
also
you.
a badass.
I do my best. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up now. So thank you again, Jonny, for joining us and sharing your insights and experience. It was fantastic. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and follow and subscribe to the GC podcast. And don't forget to get your tickets to GC New York City. Jonny, of course, is going to be there. And it will be the ultimate gathering for co-working leaders, innovators, and community builders shaping the future of work. And that's in April. And you can pick up your tickets at na.juicy.co. I'm Liz Elam. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.